Hello, everyone. Welcome. So today we're going to sort of talk about using communication APIs to enhance your user experience within your mobile applications. And we're going to have a little bit of a rant about notifications and trying to reduce notifications and just talking to your users of your apps in a more friendly way that isn't going to kind of just be perceived as spam and ignored. So before we start, a little bit about who I am. I'm the senior Android developer advocate at Vonage. Prior to that, I've been an Android developer for too many years. Probably about 12 years now. 2009 is when I started with my HTC Magic. And we'll learn more about that tomorrow. But what does seem to keep happening with every job that I take is I end up getting pulled into some kind of telecommunications, something about communications in general. I used to be a developer advocate at Huawei. Prior to that, I worked with an Australian telecommunication company developing an Android tablet. And basically, whether I like it or not, this has been my job for a long time. And I do like it. I do enjoy it. It's a lot of fun. The other thing to know about me is I am a bit of a Warhammer enthusiast. I really enjoy painting models. I find it very relaxing. It's nice to switch off and do something else when I'm not coding. So this is kind of something I've worked on recently, which I'm quite happy of. So if we're going to talk about communication APIs, we're going to talk about communicating with our users, we have to talk about notifications. In the beginning of Android, when we started, we had the notification drawer. And it was amazing. It was new. There were other mobile platforms that were doing notifications, that were kind of presenting some way to notify a user about something in your app. But they were kind of very mismatched. It wasn't a kind of ubiquitous, easy-to-use platform, and that's where Android came in. And from the very start, we had notifications. And they were great. It was a really great way for us to be able to quickly get important information in front of our users of our apps. And users really enjoyed it because it meant no matter what app they were currently in, no matter what they were currently doing with their applications, with their phone, they had access to important information. They had access to email notifications. They had access to the latest text message that they'd received. And what it also meant is we had a way of pushing content to users when the app was closed. They didn't have to be in your app to receive information from your app. So like I say, you didn't have to be in the SMS app to receive a text message. You got that, you could see who that was from, you could see information about that message, and then decide whether that was important to action now or something that could be left for later and worried about later. It also kind of gave new ways of users being able to interact with apps. Obviously, one of the great ones is accessing music controls. So you could quickly pause a song, change to the next song, do all these sorts of things without having to open the actual application. You had more controls, and we had kind of new use cases. It was great. Then time kind of started to go on. And I'm going to ask you a question. I'd like you all to look at your phones now and think about how many notifications you currently have on your phones. How many have you kind of been ignoring? How many have you kind of, oh, I'll deal with that later, or I'm not going to kind of look at that right now? The answer is probably, it may well look something like this. So this was my phone within the space of an hour while I was writing this talk, and these were the notifications that I received in that time. It's not great. It's a nightmare. It's stressful. I don't want to be looking at that. On average, what we found is users get about 46 notifications a day. And that's on average. So people that are probably using their phones more, like developers, are probably going to get a lot more than that. I know I certainly get a lot more than that. I felt like I got 46 in that hour. So you've got this kind of constant stream of notifications and this constant kind of anxiety about, what am I going to do with these? How am I going to action them all? And what happens is, you don't. Only about 4.6% of notifications are actually actioned in some way, other than just dismissed. So notifications start to be treated like spam. Whether it's actually information that you do want to receive, like I do want to know that I have an appointment coming up. I do want to know that I've received a notification about a delivery that I have coming. These kinds of things are important information, but they're lost in recommendations from YouTube, Twitter notifications, endless notifications from LinkedIn. These kinds of things that just don't stop and feel like spam. So what that presents is a user experience nightmare if you have an app and you have notifications or information that you want to give to your user, no matter whether they're in the app or whatever they're doing. You have some information that you as a developer is deemed important. So, don't worry. Google came up with a way to resolve this with Android. The control was given over to the users of the phone user. Android introduced new ways to mute, stop, kind of filter out notifications you didn't want. That's really great. It means that maybe you can actually get your notifications under control. You only see the ones that are important to you, and everyone's happier. However, that is terrible for developers. Terrible if you're developing an app and suddenly the user just completely shuts off the notifications to your app. If your app depends on the user getting that information in real time, in a way that's useful to them, it can be a nightmare that, well, yeah, they have the control to disable that completely, and your app could essentially be useless. So you're no longer able to get that important information to a user, even if perhaps some notifications in your app are vital. If they've decided to completely sort of block all notifications, that's gone. So I think what that kind of creates is an environment where notifications become less important. As a developer, you can't rely on a notification being received by your user. You can't rely on them seeing it, and you certainly can't rely on them actually doing anything with it. It becomes an optional extra for your application. So because you may or may not see it, you don't want to send important information that way. It has to be information that's isn't important, is something that's optional. And that creates the cycle of, well, users are getting lots of notifications that aren't important information that they don't want to see, so they're blocking more notifications, so they're closing it off. So as developers, you can't send them important information. The cycle goes round and round and round. So what do we do? What do we do if we have information that we need to get to the user? There is something that you need a user to action, to do, within your application, within your system in general. Or if there's a situation where you need to start a conversation with your user. And what do I mean by conversation? What does a conversation flow look like? Well, if we use notifications, the current sort of flow looks something like you send a notification, you pray that the user actually sees it, you wait for the user to actually open your app or action that notification. That may or may not be 10 years. Who knows? And then you have to do something in your app to start that conversation. You might have a bot, a chat bot. you might have a live chat, you might have a phone number, there might be some sort of conversation that you have to have with that user. It might just be like an automated flow, but you need to do something. And for your application, that's important, but the first step is actually getting the user to start that conversation. And if you're using notifications, that, as we can see, isn't so possible. It's not a good user experience if you're trying to start a conversation through notifications. It's slow because the likelihood is when they get that notification, that isn't going to be when they action it. They may wait until they've got a free moment. They may ignore it completely. They may remember the next day, oh yeah, I received that notification. I really needed to do that. And even then, when they do go to do that, it still requires a lot of steps. They've either got to just open your app and go through the process there, or find the notification again and go with that. And even then, it may not happen. It may not be actioned. Again, you as a developer, as an app, can't rely on this kind of flow to communicate with your users. So, of course, there's the final question of, you need to communicate with your users, but they don't even have the app installed anymore. They've decided it's so much spam that they're actually just got rid of the app completely. And maybe they're still using the service that you offer on another platform, or you've got a web interface, or there's something else that so the user is still using your service. They haven't deleted their account or anything, but they have deleted the app. Well, you can't send push notifications anymore to notify them of stuff. The app isn't there. So how could we improve this? How could we make this a better user experience when we need to guarantee that a user gets important information? And that's not necessarily just important information that we as developers have deemed important, but the user has also said, this is important, I want information about this. Even if they have opted to have your notifications, they've left that on, it's still going to get lost. There is a chance they're just not going to do anything with it. So we're not talking about spam, we are talking about information they want. And how can we more quickly actually start an interactive conversation with users? How can we get them the information they want, and if they perhaps have questions or they have, they need more help, more information, how do we get that to them effectively? And I think that's where communication APIs can come in. They can provide new user experiences that perhaps more traditional methods of communicating with users through the app itself, through notifications, through email, these sorts of things, I think communication APIs can help improve. They're also platform independent. So again, if your system also has, dare I say it, an iOS app or a web app, or you're probably going to have other ways the user can interact with your system. So communication APIs could help across the board. They can also help you add new communication channels to your app, new ways of actually interacting with your app which just previously didn't exist. Okay, but what do I actually mean by communication APIs? It's quite a broad topic. What are we actually talking about here? So one example would actually be using SMS. So you're sending and receiving SMS text messages via code, whether that's within your app, via your back-end server, but at some way actioning the ability to get a text message to that user's phone number. You could, for example, create a chatbot through SMS. So you ask your user a question, and you can instantly then initialize that chat. They can reply to that question instead of having to open the app and starting a live chat or something like that. They can directly talk to your bot and initialize that conversation. We're also talking about voice. So that might be an app-to-app audio call, perhaps between users, or even to some sort of support agent or something else that you might have in place. That can also be app to actual physical phone. So again, if you have like a call center or something that's you have a phone number that goes through to that call center, you could actually have within your app a button to just press a call, and the user doesn't have to actually then physically make that phone call. It can also go the other way. So perhaps there's a situation where you have an app that's being used within your company internally, and that could actually act as the receiver of incoming support phone calls, and then that could be fielded to different people that have the app, or however you might need to do that. Within voice as well, we kind of talk about automated text-to-speech as well. So I think we've all probably used that example where you call a phone number and you get an automated menu that says, press 1 to do this, press 2 to do this. So using a communication API around voice, you could do that. You could create an automated way to go through different menus. And then the third thing, which is probably even more prevalent now, is video chat. So creating things like one-to-one video calls within your application, having some sort of multi-videos like conferencing, or a learning environment where you have a teacher that's calling to multiple students, and actual meetings APIs as well. This could also include things like screen sharing or other video sources for your, instead of just the camera, it could be other video sources as well. So obviously, Vonage does this. Vonage does communication APIs. This is kind of some of the examples we're going to use, but this is not the only provider of these communication APIs. This is just the examples that I have available. Things like voice, video, SMS, completely self-service so that you can kind of get started and just sign on yourself. And also, importantly, providing SDKs in multiple platforms so that you can just use the Android SDK, use the iOS SDK, use the back-end JavaScript or Ruby or Python or whatever it might be. But I think one thing that's also really important is a lot of these APIs are just REST APIs. So you could do this through whatever platform you're using, whatever way that you're going to make an HTTP request. So for example, using curl here to send a SMS message. So I kind of want to talk about a couple of use cases and some ideas that might kind of resonate with you. SMS alerts. On average, when you receive a text message, 99% of the people will actually read that text message. And this is from redeye.com is the source for this. It was an independent kind of survey. Users could in this situation, select and receive what they deem as important information for specifically SMS alerts, and therefore things like less important information can still be received by push notifications. They can still be directly actionable within your application using app linking and deep linking. So the SMS might contain a URL, which you click on, and that takes you into your app and starts some sort of flow. So one use case for this is SMS alerts. You've got an item that you really want, you really, really want. I still actually haven't been able to get a PlayStation 5, but you really want. And so you set up some stock alerts. If you do that through push notifications, they're going to get lost. It's not important information for the system. It's going to still be kind of included with all your other notifications. But for you personally, it's really vital that you get a notification as soon as PlayStation 5s are in stock. And you want to be able to directly do something with that. So the users sign up through your stock alert application. They select to receive SMS alerts for that particular item, whatever it might be. And they're still going to get the alerts even if the app isn't installed. So maybe they just signed up through your web portal, through your web app. you still have a way to directly communicate with your users on their phone. So again, here's a quick example of how you could do this to create an SMS alert and have that sent through in Java on the server side. So this would be if you were building a server and you didn't want it actually in your application, but you want to be able to send messages irrelevant of if the user has stuff installed. The next one would be a help desk, like we said, stuff around if you've got some sort of support, you can build a call button within your application. And the audio call will be started actually within your app. There's no need for the user to go into the phone app, to dial a number, any of those steps. So the user never leaves your application, never breaks their flow, never stops whatever it is they're doing. So for example, if you have a museum, the museum has a physical phone at their help desk, and that help desk is run by volunteers. They aren't technical people. They don't want to learn a technical system. They want to be able to just pick up the phone, talk to someone, answer their questions, go about their day. Now, you're a visitor to this city with this museum, and you might want to call this help desk, but actually calling in that country could be very expensive for you, if at all possible. So you're at your hotel, and you have Wi-Fi. You've viewed the museum's app. You still have some questions, and within that app there is a button to make a call. So therefore, you can make a free call for the user. It's free. And again, it's just within the app. It's not breaking their flow. They might be looking at a particular exhibit that they're interested in more information. That can then go through the communication API and link to that physical phone. So on the help desk, nothing changes. They can still answer the phone, answer the questions, and be done with it. They don't have to do anything on a computer. They don't have to learn any new systems. But the museum has a new way of interacting with their users, a new use case to kind of get more interest and answer people's questions. And again, this is pretty easy to kind of get set up and started. So this is an example of how you would initialize a voice call within our Android SDK. So you log in to the client, and then you initialize a server call to a phone number. And that's all you have to do. It's all then handled on the back end by us. The third example, if we're thinking about video, something like an in-app video doctor or some sort of virtual GP service. You could basically enable one-on-one video calls with your doctor, and that means that doctors can see many more patients, and also see patients that for whatever reason can't make it to the office. I think we've seen obviously this over the past few years. If people don't want to leave their home, but still need to access a doctor, this could be done virtually through a video API. But importantly, compared to just doing it through audio, you can still provide visual diagnosis. You can still kind of actually have that face-to-face interaction with your doctor. So again, the user signs up for the virtual doctor app. They can book directly within the app and initialize that video call with the doctor when it's time. The user never leaves the app through that whole process. But on the doctor's side, they're using perhaps a web interface or some other software to actually initialize that video call and have that conversation with the user. So for the doctor, they don't have to leave whatever appointment system they might be using or any of those sorts of kind of situations. So to make that happen, we kind of look at, basically we have three variables that we use. We have a session, which is the actual video session that we're initializing. We have the publisher, who is the app that you're publishing your video out from, and the subscriber, who's the video that you're receiving back from the other member of that session, or members, if you've got a kind of multi-video session. We then have a session listener, which kind of watches out for different events that might happen. So you have, when we connect to that session, we're going to initialize our publisher, and when we receive a stream back, we're initializing our subscriber and adding that into the session. And then if the stream drops, we lose our subscriber. We can then we just build the session, we set the listener, and then we connect. So again, it's a very straightforward process to bring video into your applications in some form, however flexible you might need. And really, what this is all about is aiming to reduce the number of notifications that you as an app developer are sending users. We'd all love to get back to the situation where we have no notifications, and the notifications which we do receive are important, and we can just action those when we need to. So by doing this, it produces a nicer user experience. They don't see your application as something that's sending them lots of spam. And it can also really maximize the user's engagement. It can really be beneficial for your app, because when the user is doing something because they've received a notification, received an SMS, or they're initializing a voice call, they feel like that's all happening in one uniformed way in your application. So I'm not going to take up too much time, and that was kind of just a very quick look at communication APIs and new use cases that might exist. If you are interested in getting started, you can join us at the Vonage booth. You can head over to developer.vonage.com, or you can ask me some questions in a moment. But really, that's kind of all I wanted to cover today, just to give you the idea of other ways that you can interact with your users that don't involve notifications. So yeah, I mean, thank you very much. If you are interested in sort of more things that I'm up to, the QR code will take you through to my Polywork profile, which shows you all my social media and all that sort of fun stuff. And all my slides are also on GitHub, when that's presented that strangely. That does say presentation. It's just fallen over onto the second line. But yeah, that's it really. If anyone has any questions, I'd love to hear them. Thank you.